Often you may not see a woman and her children homeless on the streets, but that doesn't mean it doesn't affect them. Whether through job loss, illness, domestic violence, or drug or alcohol abuse, homelessness still affects everyone. Linda Mumblo founded Christina's House, which is a nonprofit organization, and joining her is Shannon Mumblo, her daughter-in-law, who helps run the transitional home that helps those women and children that need it the most. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me and talking to me about Christina's House. We'll start with you, Linda. How did this whole entire idea come about?
I was attending church a couple of years ago in 2010, and I was witnessing these men coming to church every week sitting in the back, and I found out later they were part of the Springfield Rescue Mission, and part of their contract is that the men would attend church service somewhere. So I accepted the answer, and as we moved forward, I began to see the men moving their seats from the back row up to the front row, and they were clearly praising God. And I said, well, this is really wonderful. But then I looked around and I said, where are the homeless women and where are the homeless kids? They're not here. So who's addressing the issues with homeless women and kids in the city? And that's when I really felt the call to reach out and help women and kids in the city.
And how did you go about, you saw a need, you wanted to fill it, how did you go about doing that?
Well, first I was working. I retired in 2011 from Bay State Medical Center, and I was a manager, so it was a very busy schedule, and I knew there was no way I would be able to put this together while working. So I retired in 2011, and really there's so much information online to get started, so I looked at the steps to get started and formed a board and did all the paperwork, and we ended up getting our nonprofit status in February of this year, and then we just started looking for homes. So we have a board and we're really ready to go.
Now, Shannon, she's more than just your mother-in-law. You work with her on Christina's House. Talk about that.
Well, I have a special place in my heart for just homeless women and children. When I was younger, it's something that I faced with my own mother. So growing up, I've just had an affinity towards children, and so when she had this on her heart 3 years ago and wanted to start this, I knew that this was something that I was going to be a very big part of.
And what are some of the struggles that you guys have encountered the past couple of years since starting this?
Struggles, I think, in a good way. They've built us up and continued to give us hope. Struggles just in terms of just trying to raise money, get the word out there, just allowing people to believe that this is something that is going to happen. But as people talk to us and learn about our mission and vision, they really have come on board and have a profound respect and support for what we're doing.
Now, you had mentioned, Linda, that you saw the men that were homeless, and that tends to be more aware in everybody else's mind. Yes, there's a lot of homeless men, but most often people don't see women and children homeless. Talk about some families that you've encountered that have really needed help and how you've been able to step up to the plate and help them.
Well, for example, the first call I ever got about Christina's House was from a 29-year-old woman who was 9 months pregnant, and she was actually going to be homeless in 7 days. And she literally had no family in the area that could step up, and I just really felt I had an empty room, and I felt it would be wrong not to take her in. So she's been with me since July, and she's had the baby, a beautiful baby. And so I see what she's going through in trying to get housing somewhere. What's interesting is because I took her in, she's no longer considered homeless. So it's been a struggle for her to try to find housing for her and the baby.
Now, unique to Christina's House, on your website, it mentions that each woman will work with a volunteer mentor. What is that? What does that entail?
Well, each woman that comes to Christina's House will have her own specific needs and a different personality. And we have had an outpouring of responses of people who really want to volunteer. And part of their gifts are mentoring. So mentoring could be would be that we would be pairing each woman with a mentor, and that mentor will help those women either make it to appointments, help their children get to daycare, but also talking to them about how they're doing, what their progress is, what do they need, what kind of social support do they need. Come over for dinner, let's go out for coffee, that sort of thing.
And this is kind of in its infancy. You guys are just starting out. So talk about what's the next biggest step or hurdle along the way to really make this what you have in your mind, what you want it to be.
I think that the biggest step is financial. We're a faith-based, so we're a faith-based nonprofit, so we're looking for private donors. We have been incredibly successful, and we've raised $50,000 since July, so we're doing really well, but we're looking for monthly support in order to complete the purchase of the house. And then once we get into the house, we'll need more finances in order to get, de-letting done and some exterior work done. It's a very large old Victorian, but it's in actually pretty good shape. So finances and lots of support from volunteers.
It seems like you guys are trying to turn Christina's house from an organization into a literal house. And this is the house you're talking about, the Victorian house. That will hopefully house 4 to 6 families. Is that about it? What goes into taking care of 4 to 6 families? And this isn't they're only going to be there for a week. You're truly going to help these families get back on their feet. How are you going to do that?
Again, it's with private donations and a lot of community support. We've looked at other organizations and we've seen how other organizations operate. So instead of doing all of this ourselves, we've taken what works in other areas and we're taking those and applying them to us. We're not charging the women rent. They'll be required to give 30% of what they make, which will be put into an account for them for when they leave, which will help them with housing when they get out.
So it'll be like a savings account almost?
Yes, because once the biggest problem with the homeless and homeless families specifically is affordable housing. There's actually an 11 to 12 year wait to get Section 8 housing. So even if they get a job, they're still not going to be able to afford the rents. I read somewhere where it will take a family 88 hours of work to be able to afford a one-room apartment. So we need to support the families once they leave, and part of what we want to do is to really follow them for about 5 years to make sure that we have given them all the tools that they need to succeed and become self-sufficient.
And I love that you guys call yourselves a transitional house. Is it a transitional home?
Yes.
You're not a homeless shelter. You're not focusing on that negative connotation. You're a transitional home to help people as they transition onto life. And this is, I'm sure, just one of different aspects of the home. What else does the home offer to these women and children?
Also unique to Christina's house is we will be having an on-site couple coming. We've had somebody following us since our inception, and they actually live in Tennessee. This is a family who is a husband and wife with 3 children. The mother also had a very similar experience in her life, and that's part of what's bringing them to Christina's house. They will be leaving everything they have in Tennessee and moving here next month, actually. So we've found our on-site couple. They will be responsible for just helping the upkeep of the home and being just kind of like the house parents for women to go to and role models for them as what a couple should look like and how a Christian family really works in terms of raising children and working together as a couple. A lot of these women have had very negative relationships with men, and so it's really important for them to see a healthy relationship.
Now talk about the next month or two. It's going to be very pivotal for Christina's house. What needs to go in to make this a reality?
Right now, we really are focused on our fundraising efforts. The church that owns the home has been very generous to us and has given us a lot of time to raise funds. December 6th will be our first annual Christina's House Christmas Ball at the Springfield Marriott, and we hope that would be a huge success. We have a lot of interest in that, but even before that, we need to continue to raise money and monthly donations and pledges just to cover our costs and to help make this possible. It will be Christina's house, and we will get there, and we know that people will help support us.
That's great. And how can, if somebody's watching and they can help in any way, shape, or form, how can they do that?
We have a website, www.christinashouse.org, and it has a lot of information. It has some education, but there's also a way in which to help financially. And there's also a form on there for anyone that's interested in volunteering and they have any specific skills. And once we do have possession of the house, we will have a huge volunteer meeting.
Have you had a response from women that they either know the house is coming or they're just curious if you can help them?
I've actually been overwhelmed. I'm getting calls every single day, either calls or emails asking for information on Christina's house. And I actually brought with me, I received about a couple of weeks ago a letter from a woman with 3 children who live in a hotel. And this is basically what she had to say. She said, I have no form of transportation and it limits her chances of going out and trying to get a job or something. She feels like she was just dropped off there. Her babies, of which she has 3, have not had a hot meal since she was placed here, and there's mold. And she herself is afraid because so many truckers and other men stay in the hotel and they say bad stuff to the girls, and she's very concerned about that. And she really wants better for herself and her kids. She's 22 years old. Wow. And so I did contact her, and she said she would be the first applicant for Christina's house.
So I'm sure that she cannot wait to have a safe, loving environment for her and her family. And I guess that's what it boils down to. That's the most important thing.
Hope.
That's right. They need hope. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming on board and talking to me about Christina's house. And we're looking forward to following this adventure, this progress of what's going to happen in the next month or two and how many families you'll be able to help in this area as well, too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.